when you open a box and it's a puzzle, there's never one piece. Like no puzzle that you've
Yeah.
ever opened is like just one piece and then it's completely done.
Yeah.
And and I say that because we're all puzzle pieces trying to create this vision together. So you may be the puzzle piece of access to capital. And then you may be the puzzle piece of the experience. And then I may be the puzzle piece of the solution. And then this puzzle, like all of these puzzle pieces. But we have to take value in what we contribute and what we do so that we can be able to all collectively work together so that we can solve the problems that exist in our communities, in our countries, and throughout this world.
Behind every mission, every movement, and every attempt to create change, there's a human story shaping how it all unfolds. I'm Dr. Payal Beri, and this is Reframing Perspectives. This podcast is for those change makers, those purpose-led founders, nonprofit leaders, growth mindset individuals, and purpose-driven entrepreneurs who believe the work that they're doing in the world should actually make people's lives better. Each week, I'm sitting down change makers who are shaping impact in their industries and communities. And together, we're going to explore the moments, the questions, and the perspective shifts that changed how they lead, how they build relationships, and how they create meaningful change in our world. Welcome to Reframing Perspectives, the podcast for change makers who believe relationships are the real infrastructure of impact. Kyle, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here today. The energy that you bring to every conversation and the work that you do has just been such fire. And the fact that right before we got on this call, you also just had this like explosion of like really great news from the work that you're doing. I'm just really excited to just like dive into what you're doing in the social good space and world.
Oh yeah, I'm excited to be here. I'm so thankful to have been invited to your platform. You are special and
Oh,
hopefully in the conversation I get to communicate some things that I've even changed in our business structure because of conversations that we've had that you don't even know about.
oh,
So,
wow.
look, I'm excited to be here, excited to have this conversation. Let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get into it. Well, before we dive into all of this new stuff that now I'm just like, I want to know, I want to start with because, for the listeners, I really want to start with something that's I find really interesting from way back when.
Yeah.
And this is where, okay, I know for me, figuring out what exactly I wanted to do was not a linear path. I jumped into a million different things and, it all led me to this. What I find so amazing is that you were one of those kids in college that I would have probably looked at and be like, of course he knows what he's doing. But it's the fact that you started Project Shine in college. You were so clear on the mission that you wanted to have with that, how you wanted to help, other students and help high school students, bringing out like the work that you did with them. What led you to knowing even in that moment that I'm going to do something to better the world?
That's a great question. And I appreciate that question so much because I find that I come on a lot of shows and they only ask about the business that I never really get to share the story. So I grew up, so my background helped me really understand the things that I needed to do. So I grew up, my parents, my mom, she was pregnant at 13 with my sister, Central Jersey projects. Single mother household, didn't know her father until she was in her, I think her 40s or 50s. My dad, he was one of 13. His mom passed when he was 6 years old, and he never knew his father. And I remember a few weeks ago, my father stayed here with me for about a month. It was amazing before he went back. And he said he never remembers a conversation that he had with his father his whole life. And I remember me and my dad were talking for about 45 minutes to an hour. And he was like, I never remember one conversation with my father. And I tell those stories because my mom has grown to be the first Black executive with Volvo Cars. No college degree, no, just grit, passion, and the right opportunities over a period of time. And now she's an executive with Amazon, the Amazon. And my father, even though he had a terrible background, he's transformed the lives of people. He was a pastor, he was a coach, he was a community builder. So I find that my life has always been at the intersection of leaning on relationships, grits, and building bridges for other people. So my parents did a phenomenal job exposing me to opportunities early on in life. But one opportunity particularly was in high school. I was a sophomore in high school, and they introduced me to this program where we lived in North Carolina called HPrep. I believe it stood for It was like higher ed professional resource exposure program. It was at Duke University Med School, and it was a 3-week incubator for kids that wanted to go to school to be doctors. And my goal when I came into college, I wanted to go to the pre med track. I knew I wanted to be a nephrologist who was a doctor that specializes on the kidneys. And I wanted to be that because my grandmother, my great grandmother on both sides all died of kidney failure. And if we look at the Black community, a lot of the challenges that we have in health and a lot of my family line all had kidney diseases. So I wanted to be the one to create a generational change and go off and be a doctor and do all these great things. Got to college, I took chemistry. I was like, you know what? This may not be for me. And I say that because I always knew that I wanted to do something big to create change, but I really didn't know what. So I was very fortunate to intern with a lot of different places in college. So the USDA and NASA, or excuse me, NASA in Houston, Texas, the USDA in Colorado, BMW right here in South Carolina. I did a lot. But a college professor introduced me to this opportunity to study abroad in Ghana. So we spent 8 or 9 weeks there. And at this time, I knew that I wanted to be a stockbroker. And I went there and then I just wanted to just learn business and international opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. And there was an opportunity where we went into one of the classrooms outside of Accra, and I can literally still feel the tears running down my face. It was no air conditioning, no technology, no whiteboards or anything of that nature. It was chalk. It was wooden desks. Some of those children didn't have shoes on their feet. Some of them, they had uniforms, but some of them did not. And they were some of the most brilliant, respectful, and sharp children that I have ever seen in my life, still to this day, truthfully. And I remember walking out and we set up computers for them and talked to them for a little bit about the experiences that we have in America. And I remember walking out and a young man came up to me and he said, Mr. Kyle, can you just give me some advice? And I said, yeah, of course. He said, what is it going to take for me to just make it to America? And I said, what do you mean? And he was like, I know that if I just make it to America, I can be successful. And I remember riding back on the bus to go back to our hostel. And I was just in the back, just so filled with emotion because I was like, you come back home and there's kids that don't even want to be in school. They're not paying attention in class. They're throwing papers to each other. They're disrespecting this power that we have, the education being the great equalizer. And I wanted to create change. So I came back. It was a group of my friends. I went to the dean of my college and I was like, look, Dr. Smith, I want to start a nonprofit and I want to take a lot of what we learned in Ghana and empower our kids here and create a dual immersion program where we're sending kids to Africa and those kids are coming here. I was a junior at the time. And he looked at me kind of like you're looking at me and he was like, let's do it. And he was the first person outside of my accounting professor, Mr. Gibson, that I truly believe showed me the importance of how to build infrastructure when you're creating change. So we raised 100 grand in roughly 4 or 5 months, just leveraging donors and businesses and other alumni, put together a board. We were doing student programs and all of these different things because I really believed that I could create a difference and create change. And SHINE at the time stood for service, serve, hope, inspire, network, and empower. Because I believe that the best leaders lift first, like service is through, like leadership is service. And I believe if you create hope in people wherever they are, that is like the pill that will keep you moving forward. And how can we be inspirational? I believe your network is super, super important in the importance of building community. And I believe that is what empowers communities forward. So from that point, even though I graduated college and didn't work in the social impact industry at first, I was always like in my heart, it was always there. And I always wanted to work with kids and work with community and really be able to just build human beings and build bridges. So I appreciate you asking for that, but it started at home. And I think through experience and exposure and just having a heart that, hey, I want to just give because life gives to the giver. I wanted to genuinely create change with other people.
Oh my gosh, there's so many moments in here that I'm just really taken back by. I think one of the core things, though, that I keep hearing, the level of compassion that sits in the center of everything you're talking about, your mom being a cycle breaker in the way that she was able to set an example for you that whatever the circumstances were that she grew up in does not dictate the life that she has to lead.
Exactly.
And combine that with your father who's a pastor who like literally invokes love and community, bringing that, it's just like the perfect combination to create someone like you who, sees that and sees that care and kindness. But even when you're talking about what you experience with students in Ghana and what you see back home, I think this is one of the challenges that I do think happens in a country like the United States, where there is so much abundance here and opportunity. And we get really, really focused, and not necessarily by fault, but media things that are shown to us, that we forget the level of privilege that we have across so many other countries,
100%.
that even our worst is still significantly better than people in a lot of other nations.
Right.
And when you were talking about that kid who said that if I could just come to America and if I could just do this, the success that I could have, honestly, it reminds me of just even the fact of why my dad came here, right? What was the reason of my father, in India, who just saw that in order for him to help elevate his family socioeconomic class, for him to give his kids a better future, his golden ticket was the green card and was coming to the United States. And so I think that there's this relationship with understanding, again, the understand of like of an immigrant kid who recognizes that, and how that can shape that. What you're doing is exposure and helping people see that it doesn't matter. A kid is a kid, a student is a student, intelligence is intelligence. Like it doesn't matter where that is. But if we start to see this as an opportunity to come together and build brilliant things,
Yeah.
we can really, really see how lucky we are here, and use like actually take the opportunity to be like, look what you have at your hands that other people are dying and starving for.
Literally, literally. I find that, I've learned a lot in my life that life isn't about what you do, it's about what you create.
Mhm.
And I gave a speech years ago, and I started the speech with, if you lost your voice, what have you built that can speak for you? And a lot of times we're working at these jobs and we're just doing things and doing things and doing things, but we're not building things, because when you build it and you create it, you have to have a sense of empathy for the other people that you're building it and creating it for. Like most times, you don't build things just for you to use, you build things so that other people can experience it with you. So I've always wanted to build or create. I was not given the ability to sing or the ability to draw, but I was given the ability to solve problems. And that's my creative expression in finding a way to create and build structures or platforms or ecosystems so that people can be able to thrive off of what we build together.
Yeah, and when you do that with, especially with what you're doing with Culture Lab and what you have created, is what I'm really interested in, because you just mentioned this about that you're building something for the people that you want to support. Do you
Yeah.
find that sometimes there is this misleading thing that people have, leaders have, where they are invoked with so much emotion and they care, but really they're projecting their own work of, I'm doing this for you, but what's coming across is more, I have sympathy for you. And so look at this. And it's like you're building it and you're, to some degree, to reward your own ego, to reward your
That's a great
own
question.
sense of how, look at me and how I've elevated this community, and look at me and look at what I've done. Where we do know there's a lot of narcissism that does exist in the social impact space. So we can't
Yeah.
deny that. But even though it's like, well, they're doing good with it. So that piece of, what you said is so important, is that when you're building something for a community, it's not treating them as, oh, look at what we've done for you, but it's really
Yeah.
inviting them to be like, you're the stewards that are helping us navigate how we then build a community that you actually need.
I agree. There's two people in my life over the last few years that have really honed in on that perspective that you've just given. And one was Dr. Lorenzo Johnson. I was a teacher, eighth grade ELA, and I taught after I created a career. So I built a successful publishing company and have written books and all of these different things. And I wanted to just go back and serve. So I wanted to be an eighth grade ELA teacher. So I went back and I taught for a year. And I used to bring all these entrepreneurs and like chefs and all of these different things to come into the classroom and expose these students that were at an underrepresented school, failing school, one of the worst in the district, to just opportunities outside of what you would be used to. And it created a rift amongst my team and my colleagues because I was the one with the resources, with the reach, and with the relationships to be able to do these things. But then other students in those other classrooms that weren't in mine didn't get to experience it. And my mentor sat me down and he said, Kyle, I love what you're doing. It's amazing. But if you want to move this school forward, it has to happen outside of just your classroom. This place is bigger than just you. He said, your 75 students that you touch will be amazed. They'll go off and do all these things, but we won't be able to move this school from an F to a D to a C. You have to find a way to use your resources to empower everyone. So it really sat with me. And then I identified a way to not just be self serving as the best teacher or the one that the kids liked, but how can I collaborate amongst my team? How can I ensure their collective voices are heard? How can I create an experience that's inclusive to all kids that we may not be able to do it at scale, but we can identify ways to deepen the relationship or deepen the experiences so that all of our kids can get the same opportunities? A second opportunity came from you. A few weeks ago, we talked and you really made me rethink about really why I was doing all the things. Like we have our podcast, we have our conference, we have our learning labs, we have, all of these things that are happening, which in silos, they're all cool. We have this Growth Alliance community that you'll be potentially speaking on in a few weeks. And you asked the question, like, what is the kind of the throughway or the thread of like how when somebody engages with your podcast, how do they show up at the conference and how do we continue to keep this follow up? And it reminded me of one simple question. Is it time to run this conference? Or are you doing this for you? Are you doing this for brand reputation? Are you doing this so that you are the one that put together this platform to build 2,000 people? Are you doing it deep down for the revenue that is going to come from it? Are you doing it down just so that you can say that your model works in regards to fundraising and all of these different things? Are you just doing it so that you can be the guy that gave away hundreds of thousands of dollars and now people identify as that? Or is this the best possible time and the best possible experience? So there's been deep thoughts about, do we just
Wow.
move 2027? Because it's not about you, Kyle. It's not about your brand. It's not about your reputation. What does your community need right now? And the community doesn't need another conference. The community needs intimate experiences. So your learning labs are more important right now. Your podcast is more important right now. So maybe we shift, we push it back, you eat your pride, and you create spaces for your people.
Wow, that is a huge shift that I was
Yeah.
not expecting.
Sorry to throw you off. Yes.
No,
Yes.
I mean, that's incredible because it really did this. I'm hearing like, same situation, different instances, right? With at the school and then now looking at it in this way. But I also wonder, I mean, first of all, that's fantastic. I'm really excited to hear more about what you end up doing with this because yes, like I think that intimate experience is huge as well as, when people are coming in and how they get to like the energy that they get to do. And like you said, contagiously support each other contagiously. And I think that there is power in people coming together in person for sure. But something again that you said that I think is really important to touch on is that there is a leveling of leadership as well in terms of the nuances, the experience that you get that allows you to get to that place of realizing, okay, I need to expand how I'm looking at this and who gets to be a part of it. How much do you think that even when you were a teacher, it was, you're 1 year there, you're doing something really powerful, you have all these fantastic ideas and you're helping your students, but how much of it do you think it is that in your first go around with leadership and doing something new, it is going to start small. It is going to start with that one group before it expands to something else. Because how many times do we get told, and I'm sure you've been told this, I've been told this a million times, of I think too big and I got to start small here.
Yeah.
But what I'm hearing is your mentor telling you, and the way you're now thinking about this is that no, go big. Don't just focus on the small. So, which way do you think, as a leader, a first time leader, someone who's, in a nonprofit, the individuals that are in your community that are leading their own nonprofits, that are building their things, what way is the way that they should be considering in their leadership, in the way they're leading their teams, the way that they're leading their organization, and the way that they're leading the actual mission of the work?
That's a great question. That's a phenomenal question. A mentor of mine years ago, George Anchampong, always used to say a statement, Kyle, you can have everything that you want in life. You just can't have it all at the same time. And I find that big thinkers, big visionaries, big idealists get caught up in their idea that they don't backwards design it and recognize that, hey, you can still have a room or impact 1,000 people, but we have to first identify a way to duplicate how you impact one. And I think we create these spaces. And for me, what I was preparing to do was create this amazing space of 500, 600 leaders in person and then thousands of people online. But I didn't identify, well, what does the experience look like so that we can ensure that not just people are buying tickets, but there's a follow up and impact happens. And I think we haven't done the best job really defining what impact looks like. Impact is not filling out a room, it's not increasing your revenue, and it's not scaling your company. That's not impact. Impact is changing the lives and going through this transformative process of the people that you were called to serve that go from here to step A to step B or wherever you're trying to get them to. And oftentimes you have to build something that's duplicatable that works and that requires for you to go deep. So for me, I recognize that our Growth Alliance program that has worked, that we just got a $100,000 gift with one of our students and another $25,000 gift. I want to be able to say that we've built a model that you go through this. It doesn't matter if you're this nonprofit or that nonprofit, every single human that goes through it, it's guaranteed to at least get you this result, not scattered data points. I wanted to do that in a smaller, intimate setting. And as a teacher, I recognize that I could transform all of these students across eighth grade. But if you don't identify how to impact your kids that you have, and you don't have data year over year that shows that these kids are upticking in their reading levels, or in data in your team to show the culture is better and the team performance is improving, then you can't expand. And I recognize in leadership, it requires you dying on your ego so that you can expand your impact. For me, as a leader, I've always been gifted with my ability to connect, my ability to find the right people for them to believe in what I'm doing. And we can do it. We can execute, we can identify where the resources are. But then it's about me rather than humbling myself and recognizing, no, Kyle, it's not your time yet. It's not your time. It's not your time. And you have to sit with this impact and go through this series of events. And then once you come out, it's proven concept. When you think about the greatest movements or the greatest leaders, they were working on those things and testing it before it met the market. When you think of cars that are launched, it took them years of processing and testing and all of these different things before it actually, people started putting down payments on it. But I often believe that nowadays we live in a world where you could pre launch something, make hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, that's not even tested, and use people as you're testing the method out. And I just feel like that lacks integrity. And I don't want to be that leader anymore because I've done it in the past. And I feel like it didn't do the people what it needed to be. It didn't allow them to have the value or the impact that it should have. So I would rather move slowly so that we can go deeper in the work, improve the concept so that I can truly impact the people rather than focusing on speed of the market and disrupting the trust of the people that I was called to serve.
I think what you just touched on is your framework, right? It's looking
Yeah.
at community, kindness, and capital, is that
Yeah.
all three matter. It's how you integrate them. And that, if you take, and what you're talking about is because a lot of companies, a lot of organizations, we see this where it's just, focus on the capital, focus on the growth, and then that's going to feed into everything. But then in that, you dilute the community. We see membership communities that grow and expand so fast that they've now diluted their values. And now people have lost trust in who they are. And to try to gain that trust back is tenfold a lot harder than what it is to just like maintain and nurture that trust. So when you're working with your nonprofit organization leaders and when you're working with everyone that is trying to impact that change, and like you said, it's compounded. We hear this over and over again, right? It's brick by brick. I've
Yeah.
had a friend of mine who's an entrepreneur that recently sold his company almost a year ago now. And everyone's like, wow, look at this. It's incredible. And his answer is always like, yeah, it's 15 years of overnight success. And
Exactly.
so, I think that that is something we intellectually understand. And we see that. We look at, wow, Obama became president in his like young 40s and he was
Yeah.
a community organizer. But it's like, look at all those moments that led to this. This wasn't just, and yet we have such impatience in trying
Yeah.
to make impact because
Exactly.
it's like we're now in that stage of just getting immediate reward. And so,
Agree.
even as impact leaders, how do you help them savor into those moments and look at it, the fact that I understand that sometimes patience is hard because you want to just really make that large impact and see like what you're doing. But is that, to your point, is that feeding your sense of needing to feel needed? Or
Yeah.
is that actually the intentional way of the impact that you ultimately are making?
I think for any leader that's listening, and this is maybe me even speaking to me, I feel like there's a few things that I've learned in this process. I'm reading a new book called A Man's Work by Connor Beaton, phenomenal book. And in the book, it talks about this concept of not becoming on your personal development journey, but unbecoming. And Carl Jung, the psychiatrist and psychoanalyst, talks about success being one word, wholeness. And how we achieve wholeness, in my opinion, just what I'm learning, is through three things. So clarity, courage, and character. And for me, I have to always ask myself, is this the right time for this idea to be executed? Like, why am I doing this? Why is this important? Who is this impacting? And is this the right time? And that's really just it. Like, you have to get super clear on why you're doing what you're doing. And then that will reveal and unveil why you're getting ready to do what you're doing. And then I think that gives you a sense of courage to be able to go out there and share it publicly and commit to the process that it takes to be able to achieve what you're trying to achieve. And then through that process, I believe it builds character, but then it requires a certain level of character for you to be able to excel. Now, with our framework and how we work with organizations achieve these various things, it's 4 P's. It's prepare, because I think a lot of organizations are trying to do all these different things, but they're not optimized. Like with your friend that just sold his company, 15 years, it probably took them a while to be able to get to a place where they're optimized in their personnel and their systems and their processes, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what companies are buying. And that's what donors are investing in. That's what funders want to see, that you're optimized as an organization. And then number two is prove. So I think that when you become optimized, how do you prove what your differentiation strategy is? Like, what makes you different? What's your unique selling proposition? Like Seth Godin says, what is your purple cow? Like, what makes you different rather than everyone else? And what impact can you quantify and measure that you're driving in your communities? And then from there, now we have to partner. So with partnerships, it's really neat because I believe that partnerships should be really, really intentional. Like, all money isn't good money. We've heard that, but we shouldn't partner with all people either. Just because that business can help you grow or help you get more money or help you expand your reach. Like, I am really intentional with meeting people a few times and then inviting them on a podcast and then like kind of dating them before we really build. And you have to identify, how is this person or this company advancing my mission? Like, what are their values? What do they care about? Would I allow that person around my children? Like, these are the things that I always think about, because when I met with you and you give me advice, I'm taking on the lifestyle of that other person. And that's why I'm thinking so intentionally of like, no, I trust her. I trust what she's saying. She's my person. So I need to act on these various things and I need to slow my process down. Like, your strategic alliances should be moving you forward, but also holding you accountable to push you backwards so that you can not move forward too quickly. And then I think the 4th P for what we teach is propelling. So a lot of fundraisers or nonprofits that I work with, just in the social impact space, is it's a lot of relationships, it's a lot of listening, it's a lot of curiosity, it's a lot of this. So like, how do we turn this into like, all right, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing now? Like, are we getting on a podcast? Are we building something in our communities? Are we investing in each other's businesses? Are you speaking on my platform? Am I speaking on yours? Like, how do we advance those relationships forward? In business, they call it lifetime value of your customer. Like, what are we doing to continue to advance that person? So I believe that, but once we're clear and then once we have the courage and once we've developed the character to be the leader that can run and that can grow this thing, then we have to get prepared. We have to prove, we have to partner strategically. And then we have to begin to propel those relationships forward.
Wow. I think again, you touched on like all the pieces that are really critical to like not just a business success, but I think what's also really critical here that you're talking about is like the value alignment, the
Yeah.
value success, right? Because to your point is there's a relationship in the social impact space in the nonprofit world where it is so much dependent on where we're getting our money from. And this relationship of money, of capital, and I feel like there's I'm just gonna say a toxic relationship, right? Because a lot of executive directors, a lot of leaders that are in that space, they care deeply about the mission, but they don't necessarily always have the business acumen
Yeah.
to really look at this as not just, all right, this organization is going to be able to give us $100,000, this organization is going to give us $500,000, but then what are we giving up in return?
That's true.
In terms of our values, in terms of who we are, and what is that how are they gonna then influence the way that I am also running the culture within the organization, within my team? How are they gonna feel the trust of this? Are we selling ourselves out in this way? But there's this relationship of money where it's it there's this idea of scarcity there, of not necessarily always thinking about it. They think about money from a place of how is this going to fund the impact? But how do you help leaders within the space also think about when you have this capital, how do you reinvest that back into the actual organization you have set up? Because I find a lot of organizations are really focused on the impact, which is great. And that is the whole purpose and mission of that organization and nonprofit. They're not necessarily thinking about how are we nurturing myself as a leader? How are we nurturing and investing in the money to make sure that my team is set up with the level of skill sets they need and not just technical skill sets, but actually the emotional intelligence, the emotional regulation, the ability to manage other team members, like the culture itself of the organization matters so much because that is going to ultimately dictate that relationship you have with the people that are even your donors.
That's a great question. And this may be controversial and completely something that I probably shouldn't say in the industry, but this is just my philosophy.
Say it.
Any executive director or board member that I talk about that asks us or comes to us for funding and wants to fund a program but hasn't funded their people, they just don't get any relationships from me. And that's
Mm.
always one of the questions that I ask. It's like, all right, what is the money for? All right, we're trying to launch this program or this initiative or this. And I ask about their team structure, and there's 22% retention of volunteers, or they've gotten rid of their executive director every 2 years, or there's no board support. And I follow up with saying, when is the last time that you've done a board training? When is the last time that you sent your executive director to a conference or got them a coach? When is the last time that you've developed or had a coach or a consultant come in and create within your organization and partner with teams? We have to get out of, and I learned this in education as well. And education does it. It's very expensive, but it's done terribly wrong, where we're the quickest to want to invest in $100,000 program, $150,000 curriculum, a $150,000 consultant, but we won't invest in the $25,000 a year teacher. Like, I don't understand. Like, somebody make this make sense. Like, we have
It's
the money to invest in $1 million a year for this charter management organization rather than just reinvesting into the knowledge and the performance and then to the opportunities of the people that are in the building. So I find it um, very backwards if we're investing in initiatives and programs, because programs will never be able to be sustained without the right people that are invested in, that have the skill, that have the will and the heart to be able to run these programs. Because what I find similar in education is that if we continue to have turnover with our team, if we continue to have turnover with our executive directors or with our leadership, it will never allow us to be able to build deep impact within our communities. So when I look at organizations that have been around for 30, 40 years and they've had the same ED, for 10, 15 years. And then now they're offboarding that person and then bringing on a new one. And they've had the same philanthropy team and they're invested in the community. And when I say that name of that organization, people understand it and they know it and they show up. That is the type of leadership. That's the type of investment that you want to see in your organization. So look, if you're here for impact, but really deeply and deep, you're disguising it, you're disguising impact with your true desire to make money, then this social impact space isn't for you. Like I like to always say, there's a story that I heard a few weeks ago where there was this doctor, or excuse me, there was this guitarist disguised as a doctor, where it was this gentleman that was a touring guitarist. He would go on tour. He's just phenomenal. He would feel passionate about it. He let his hair down, all of these different things. He was healthy and all these things. And he actually went to school to be a doctor because he thought that was the American dream. That stress and just the pressure of living a double life caused him to get cancer. And then he started playing, he brought his guitar to work. He started playing the guitar for cancer patients that he saw. And one of his patients passed away. And the patient, in their will, they asked him to play a song that he would write at their specific funeral. This same guy, after that, went viral and he's on Good Morning America and all of these different places. And he tells this story about how his guitar and following his heart and following his passion saved his life and cured him from cancer. And I think there's a lot of leaders that have cancer that are doing this for the wrong reasons. There's a lot of people that are out here with networks, with capital, with access that are hoarding it, that are gatekeeping, that aren't really positioning it, deploying access, deploying information, deploying capital. And they're the same people on the other side of the aisle that are complaining that kids aren't reading in school, that there's too many homeless people on the street, that there's this problem on this side. So I challenge you, leaders in the social impact industry, to do the work, like do this work. And it's challenging, but every single person listening to this podcast has some form of access to a friend group, to a job, to you have access to where the problems are. You have access to a certain skill set or a level of information that can move us forward. And I believe that every single person was called, and I mean called, to do something. And I would just start every single day with just doing one small act of kindness, building a community around it, and using your access to deploy more resources in that area.
Gosh, everything that you're saying is just like leads me to want to have like another hour like podcast with you. Just, I mean, right there, right? The fact that there's that sentence of that, there are so many leaders that have cancer that are not thinking about this correctly, who are not thinking about what you have and that gatekeeping that exists. Oh my God, that gets so under my skin is the gatekeeping. Because again, it's coming from the space that we only have a limited amount of resources, and that's where I've got to keep it for me. But where is that coming from? Where did you learn this world of not being able to trust? And then if you have that, then how are you existing in a world that the entire mission of social impact is about making transformational change for communities? So your thinking, your mindset, your perspective is actually sabotaging the exact cause that you think you care about.
Exactly. Like there was I was on the phone with a colleague of mine earlier this week and she mentioned that there's $300 billion in donor advised funds. $300 billion in donor advised funds. And she talks to wealth advisors and high net worth individuals all the time. And she explains that a lot of these funds are sitting dormant for 10 to 12 years because people will make all this money, psychologically think that they just need to throw it in a fund and not utilize the fund to be able to advance impact within your communities. So look, if this podcast finds you and you have access to a donor advised fund, my question for you is what is a problem that you care about? And who is an organization that you can meet with and take to coffee or just grab coffee with in your community? It's a quick Google search really quickly, and then when you meet with that individual, ask them all the questions. And can you commit to a monthly gift for 1 year and sit on a board or show up to an event to be able to achieve transformation together? All it requires is one conversation, one coffee, and one decision for us to really have these ripples of creating change within our community. Like one thing that I always say is that when you open a box and it's a puzzle, there's never one piece. Like no puzzle that you've
Yeah.
ever opened is like just one piece and then it's completely done.
Yeah.
And I say that because we're all puzzle pieces trying to create this vision together. So you may be the puzzle piece of access to capital, and then you may be the puzzle piece of the experience, and then I may be the puzzle piece of the solution, and then this puzzle, like all of these puzzle pieces. But we have to take value in what we contribute and what we do so that we can be able to all collectively work together so that we can solve the problems that exist in our communities, in our countries, and throughout this world.
And I think something that you touch on that I think is really important also to expand on is the fact that when we're asking someone to do that one thing, right? It may be even that access, you get to be a super connector. You get to be the
Yeah,
person who says, like, hey, I've got someone here for you that you need to connect with. And as humans, we need to feel purpose for us to feel some form of, the energy that it gives us of that purpose of like, I'm doing something here. The reason why people have burnout, fatigue, exhaustion, depression when they're hearing all this bombardment of news that is negative and they feel overwhelmed by it is because they're sitting on the chair and they're like, oh my God, there's so much bad things happening. And they feel helpless or
yeah,
hopeless and they're not taking action. So a lot of times, the difference between, and I saw this research somewhere, statistics somewhere that activists or individuals that are advocating who are doing the work, they actually experience less burnout and less fatigue because they're actually taking action towards whatever the cause is that they care about
yeah.
versus the average citizen who is sitting at home and is receiving, consuming all this information, but is not doing anything about it. So if people who are listening to this and are thinking about, "Well, I'm an accountant at this company. What can I do? Or, I don't work in the social impact space, but look, what could I do? Well, you could do those things that you just mentioned. You're
Yep.
working at an organization guaranteed they have a head of partnerships person. They have a ESG. They have some department there where you could actually build a relationship with them or you could, get curious, start reading, start understanding. If you're feeling overwhelmed by where do I even start? Just start reading and start getting
Right.
educated about how do I even explore giving right now?
I think that's such a powerful piece. Like wherever you are, just do with what you're already doing. Right.
Yeah.
Identify, like, if you're a family person and you want to enjoy the time with your family, still like go volunteer somewhere with your family. Like one of the methods that we use is invitation and then immersion. Get invited to like I'm sure you've gotten invited somewhere, whether it's a gathering or a volunteering event or a gala. Like just accept the invitation and get immersed in something that's happening within your community. There's so many ways to be able to just give back. And we always say at the three T's, the time, the talent, the treasure. Like what additional time do you have a week? If you're an accountant, can you do bookkeeping for an organization? What talent do you have? If you love professional speaking, can you be a speaker at a local school? And then the treasure that you have, can you donate $5 a month? Like $5 a month to a cause and just commit to that and put that on auto draft. And then over time, those small ripples, those small layers, those small bricks, those small opportunities will compound. And then that's where change starts. And then when you begin to change infrastructures or change people, I just believe personally, like that's one of the most beautiful things. Like when you are a part of seeing a kid go to college because of you, or a family get housed because of you,
Yeah.
or a kid be able to have a bicycle for the first time or learn how to read in school for the first time. I just find that that's the most beautiful thing when your contribution, whatever it is, just whatever it is, was able to show up for someone or just sit with someone elderly and just listen to them or just have a conversation or just go write a card to a kid that is going through it. My mom, she works for Amazon, and over the holidays, they were given this list of, I think through the Angel Tree Project, of all of these kids or families that were just going through very challenging circumstances. And it showed the circumstance and it showed their address and their name. And we literally wrote cards. I think we wrote like 100 cards, and then we mailed it to all of these families. And we're starting to get the responses from a lot of those families now. And it's just so transformative. And so, like, these small acts of kindness truly go a long way.
I think what you're bringing me back to is actually even, this I'll personally share. I struggled a lot in college and just a lot of personal stuff going on in our home and family environment that I wasn't able to fully focus at school. And so the dean of my department actually told me that I should just drop out because I'm not going to amount to anything.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
And it was my college counselor, Gloria, who stood by me, worked hand in hand with my mom to help make sure that I actually graduate, that I do the things. And years later, when I finished my master's in clinical psych, I was the student speaker at graduation, and Gloria came to my graduation at my master's
Uh,
program. And after my PhD, she was there. And I lost touch with her for a few years, but just a year ago, last year, when I finished another accomplishment that I had and a milestone that I had, I texted her, and she's retired now and everything. And I texted her and just again reminded her of the action that she took, 20 years ago now, that has led me to continuously believing in myself and believing that, no, I can do this. I can finish these things and reframe what that dean said into the belief that Gloria had alongside my mother to help me get over the humps that I had going on.
uh,
And so even those moments, right, where I've never forgotten the support that a change maker like her has provided me. And trust me, if you were to message that professor, that teacher, and let them know what you're up to, the way that you then inspire them to keep going and to
exactly.
keep motivating them to be like, wow, because so many times as teachers, as counselors, even as a therapist, right? Like obviously the kids that I worked with when I was doing home-based counseling in New York in my 20s, like I don't know what they're up to now. I have no idea. And I can't Google them and be like, that would break a lot of confidentiality
Yeah.
stuff. But gosh, how much I wish that, someone reached out to me and said, like, hey, this is what I'm up to now. This is what I'm doing. It helps also that motivation when things do feel so depleted.
That's so good. That's so good. And it inspires me because there's some people that I've mentioned over the last few weeks that I need to send a note to or write a card to. And just again, anybody listening, it doesn't take a lot to go to your local grocery store and grab a $4 card or a $1 card if times are tough and go get you a $1 stamp and then send it to someone.
And forget the
It takes
card,
nothing.
just write it on a piece of paper. Here's a notepad. Like write a
That's
letter.
just
And
it.
handwritten letters are valued highly now. So
That is it.
yeah. Um, Kyle, I want to know that you've had many lives in this one life.
Yeah.
And I believe that each one of those moments takes you to that next. And who knows what's going to come in the next 5 years, 10 years, and what that version of Kyle is going to be. But when you look back at the Kyle who started Project Shine, who went to Ghana, and you look at you now and everything that you have accomplished, what would you say to that Kyle that you can say, like, look at what you've created for and the way that you've shifted the way that you have built your leadership and the impact in community that you've created?
It's interesting that you asked that question. And I'm going to try to keep my emotions in check because I really appreciate you asking that question. For the first time in my life, I see that person again when I look in the mirror. Because for years I lost that person. And maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I keep going to 2 or 3 weeks ago because there's a lot of things that happened in this last month. I looked in the mirror and I just said, like, thank you. Like you did it. Like you got over those barriers. You hurdled. You kept going. When I graduated college, I went to work for Johnson and Johnson, Janssen Biotech Pharmaceutical Sales. I sold Stellara, and I turned down going to the Peace Corps. And I was going to go to Lithuania because I was listening to all of the wrong people. Oh, you should follow the money. And, it's what about your security and company car and company phone? It's a company like Johnson and Johnson, it's Fortune 50 company, all these things. And I was miserable. And that misery let me get fired from that company within 6 months. And then I found my voice. I wrote a book and I sold $30,000 worth of copies within 30 days.
Wow.
And then I went back to building this business outside of social impact work. And I made a lot of money, but I lost myself and I was not the man that I can say that I'm proud of today. And then I get back to it. And I find that there's another story of this guy, this mailman that goes off and drops off packages to this older gentleman every day. And every day he drops off packages, there's a dog on the porch whining. A few weeks later, he goes back, dog still whining, like every time. So 3 months later, he asked the guy the first time, he was like, like, why is the dog whining? And the gentleman says back to him, back to the mailman, he says, because he's sitting on a nail. And then the mailman looks back at the elderly man and says, well, why doesn't he get up? And then the elderly man says back to the mailman, because it doesn't hurt enough yet. And I find that anybody listening, there's something in you that's a burning desire. Everybody has a burning desire inside them to make a difference. Everyone has a problem that they care about. Everyone has something it just grinds their gears when they see it. Everyone has a pain that they experience or that they've experienced in their past. My ask of you, my charge is to get up and go solve that pain in other people's lives, to get out of your discomfort, to get out of your complaining, and to get out of your complacency. And even if it's painful, to show up to that event or volunteer at that student cause or to be able to give $5 to that cause rather than buy your Starbucks coffee. I want you to commit to the discomfort of developing communities rather than the discomfort in staying in communities that are underdeveloped.
Beautiful. I think we can close it out right there because I think that right there is exactly what when people are struggling with motivation, with their why, with whatever it is, it's look at what is it. All you have to do is sit with yourself for a moment and look at what is it that you're struggling with and go out there and help someone else through that. I think that's beautiful. Kyle, thank you so much for being here and for, just sharing the many lives that you've had to create what you're doing and how you're literally the impact that you've made with the culture lab with other leaders and helping them see those layers within themselves, their belief in themselves, the motivation and the impact that is then having on community. I really believe that collaboration, community is the way forward. And what you have done and what you are doing and what you even just shared of how you're shifting your business model to lean even more deeply into that is a true testament to how you show up as a leader within your own organization to role model that for the people that you're helping as well. So thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. This is a great conversation. This is a great conversation.
This is a lot of fun. We got to have you back. Hi, friends. I have a favor to ask you. If you're finding meaning and you're really resonating with these episodes, I'd love if you could subscribe, leave a review, or share it with your friends and family. Your words help others discover the stories and perspectives that we're exploring over here. And the more that we grow and the more feedback that we get from you through these reviews, the more we can make sure to create meaningful episodes that you're going to enjoy. So subscribe, follow, leave a review, and share it with your family and friends. Thank you so much.